And you are all set to go.
This is it?
This is it.
This is it. You're ready to go, Pat, whenever you want.
And I just had everything up on my screen. The agenda, the notice, everything. I just lost it.
Pastor, you have a halo over your head.
Oh. That's nice, yeah. I'm happy. It looks that way.
Okay. Being Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 6:30 and having quorum, I'll open the Bridgewater Planning Board meeting up for this evening. First item on the agenda is call to order. And then we have a public meeting scheduled. The public meeting is for the purpose of the Planning Board review and adoption of the Bridgewater Comprehensive Master Plan, May 2022. Before that, I'll read a quick notice in. So we're still under the, I'm sorry. Okay. So we're still under the town manager's directive to not have any in-person meetings until July 1st. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted for this meeting, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time. This meeting is being recorded, and within 48 hours, we will post a link of the recording to the town's website and/or other town social media pages. The following members of the Bridgewater Planning Board are participating remotely. I'm Patrick Driscoll, the chair, Mr. Raymond Ajemian, Ms. Astrid Rojas, and Mr. Michael McDonald, the vice chair. During this meeting, all votes will be taken via roll call. The following Bridgewater town staff are also participating remotely: Mrs. Jennifer DeBobrian, the Community Economic Development Director, Mr. Shane O'Brien, the town planner. At this point, everyone's mic is muted. The board's mics will be unmuted through the whole meeting, and as items appear on the agenda, the project's representatives will be unmuted. We don't have any public hearings this evening. If there is a public hearing, or there was, we'll still allow public comment. We just ask that you use the chat feature to ask your question by listing your name and address. The host will recognize all questions in order. You can use the raise my hand feature in the participant menu as well. You'll be unmuted when the host recognizes you. Again, if anybody is asking questions or making comments, please state your name and address before doing so. If you're on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. Back to the agenda. So again, we have first up on the agenda is the Planning Board review and adoption of the Bridgewater Comprehensive Master Plan. So I'll turn it over to staff and we can go from there.
So as you know, you've had a couple different meetings with our consultant, Barrett Planning Group. Our last meeting I thought was very productive, and you had some conversations with them, and then they provided, you know, sort of a 2-page, I believe it was, list of just word changes that the board reviewed and provided the okay on. So the document that was provided to you, I believe it was last week, was the culmination and final draft of all of that work that's been done between the public, the committee, and the board. And, you know, at this point, we would just ask, if there's no other issues or questions, that the board vote to adopt the master plan so we can move to start implementing some of the items within the master plan.
So why don't we start with board comments and questions?
No questions here.
Astrid, I couldn't hear you. Did you say you had something or no?
Yeah, I said no questions here.
Thank you.
I'll just say one thing. I mean, I'll vote to adopt this plan. I just feel that my question regarding the planning board's role in the makeup of the plan and the review of the plan has never really been clarified. Based on mass general laws, and I hope at some point that it will. That's all. Thank you.
Is that raise a question referred to the chapter and section on mass general law, or?
Right. It basically says that the planning board is the body that is to adopt the plan and supposed to review it on a yearly basis, and it's never been done. I realize there are arguments of why it's been going the way it has, but I just think we should at some point clarify mass general laws as to whether we are actually abiding by them. That's all.
Oh yeah, I can take that too. So based on chapter 41, section 81D, planning board time to time can create and make a master plan, and then extend or perfect such plan, whether it be through text, maps, illustrations, appendices over time. I know some communities that make updates yearly. I know some communities that haven't done updates since they were originally adopted. But I think through this plan, the planning board and, being relatively new and kind of looking at the breakdown of this master planning process, the idea is to establish goals and policies, elements of housing, natural cultural resources, economic development, looking how land use is currently and what our expectation of land use in the future is, tying this in with open space and recreation plans and circulation, and just establishing some sort of matrix for implementation, are key elements of that Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81D. So, it's having these ideas from the planning board and having public input as part of this process, but as well as creating strategy, working with staff and the town and board members to be on top of this plan and making it a public record, and making it a public record when we decide to amend such plan, and kind of keep tabs on progress of this plan. And, looking to the future as well, when we have a project come before the board, looking to see if certain projects fit with the goals of the master plan, as well as looking at our zoning ordinance. So it's just another element of how the board can take up certain projects, and if they feel that certain projects or ideas or concepts does not fit that master plan, the board has the ability to amend said master plan, or feel that a project isn't adequate for the town due to its inability to kind of fit with the current master plan.
I understand that, Shane. My only point, and I made prior to your coming here, is that as far as I know, that the planning board has never reviewed on the yearly basis the master plan, and that the beginning of this plan, the startup of it, was not done by the planning board. And I'm not saying it was something's fishy or anything wrong. I'm just saying, based on my reading of mass general laws, that we have not abided by those laws, that it started elsewhere and it's come to us, and we are approving it. I understand that.
Sure.
I'm just saying, I think at some point that there should be some clarification, maybe through council or whatever, about where this should start and who should be doing the review. That's all. And I'm fine. I said I'm going to vote for it. That's not just making a comment. That's all.
Sure.
So Ray, I don't want to interrupt you. Are you all set with the comments?
I'm all set. Yeah, I'm all set.
So I reviewed the comments that we made in regards to mixed use. That looks like that's been corrected. Through adaptive reuse, that looks like it did get moved to the cultural section. And a few other things look like the The one thing I did point out to Jennifer and Shane this evening is that the map on 2.1 still appears to be wrong. And I think Shane is going to work to update that this week and beginning of next week. So that map does need to be updated. It's showing a lot of the open space areas as institutional lands. And Shane explained that to me. That's a coding issue with the assessors department.
Yeah, I think it's just I wouldn't say it's an error on their part. I would say that typical use codes and for property type classifications classify a lot of parks and recreational areas as what typical use codes are. So when you see an assessor's card, there's a use code number. That's if it's an institutional number, it's 9XX or something. So one of the numbers I used as an example was 912, which is for properties that are, let me pull it up for, I think, Division of Fisheries and Wildlife Environmental Law Enforcement. So what I'm trying to explain is that through the mapping process, they codified it based on that initial use code number 9. So all that blue coloring is based on institutional. So it groups in colleges and a lot of totally exempt taxation properties, whereas it's not really based on the actual use, whereas it should be open space in like recreational space, but more so from a tax standpoint. Because typically they'd be grouped into a taxation standpoint as like a number 2, which is open space or different land designated under chapter 61.
Okay, so we have to get that updated. That's going to be updated.
Sure.
So maybe a question is for Jennifer. So this started what, 3 years ago, roughly?
I believe so, yes.
It was prior to the pandemic. So the pandemic's really
Yes,
the wrinkle in it, right?
correct.
And at that time I think we did have a discussion with the board about this subcommittee, so to speak, that'd be appointed to work on it and then present it to us, correct?
I'd have to go back. I mean, probably, but I'd have to go back and look. I don't want to say yes and then have somebody tell me I'm wrong, so.
Did this come out of a planning budget, or was this out of like the council paid? Who paid for this?
The council appropriated money for this and the zoning recodification at the same time.
Do we know what this would have meant? Just if we wanted to do this more regularly, do we know what this cost?
I don't off the top of my head because it's paid out of the town manager's budget, so I don't pay the bills.
When it extended, did it was the contract extended for more money, or was that all done under the same appropriation?
The contract was extended to include, we added more for implementation because initially implementation wasn't part of the original budget, but I don't think the pandemic extended the contract price.
So if we wanted to do an annual update like Shane suggested or Ray mentioned, and we wanted to review it, and I think I pointed out.
I think if we were gonna do an annual update, it wouldn't require a consultant. I don't think annually you would need to hire a consultant this was a large project to do. You know, I think if we were gonna do an annual update, the staff could work on that with the board.
I was just trying to get a reference point as to what this cost if it was extended.
I can find out. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I can get those numbers for the board.
Do we have any other board questions or comments?
I guess I would just suggest if we were going to do it on a yearly basis, we would focus on, say, one chapter or one area, like maybe every few months. So that
We
we're
don't
not,
have to, sorry, Astrid, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. It's an idea so that we're not reviewing it all at once.
I was just gonna say, I don't think an annual update is necessary. I mean, annually you have to report on her progress. I would say every 5 to 10 years, an update is probably necessary because you'll have made progress within 5 to 10 years. And so there'll be things to change, you'll have different goals at that point. But to actually update annually, I think you'll be spinning your wheels. You'll never have anything done within it. Like, you know what I'm saying? You won't achieve a lot of the goals within a year. So to update it, I think will be wasteful.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that statement too, I think the goal here is to look at that implementation matrix that we're looking at and look at achievable goals and progress in terms of things that we've placed on that implementation tool, and see how the town can achieve some of these goals and see if we've been achieving them, as well as making planning board decisions that, you know, reference the master plan and are in accordance with the master plan too. In terms of data, the only data sets that I could see coming through the woodworks is be some census 2020 data, but I think the Barrett Planning Group did a lot of good work in terms of providing up-to-date data from census 2020, as well as some projections through ACS that, you know, we're not going to be looking at a lot of data sets. You're not going to actually see a lot of data sets that are updated yearly, but it's just going to be ideally looking at that implementation and see what we can accomplish through grants and other achievable things through that.
If I may, I agree. I mean, obviously we can't update every year, but I would then simply recommend that we schedule next summer that we report on the progress of the plan. That'll be put on the agenda for whatever date.
Happy to do that.
Mr. McDonald, any comments?
Nope, nothing for me on this.
Do we feel comfortable? I mean, we have to have a map updated. I think we're there. Do we want to vote on it tonight, or do we want to just agree to just fix the map, then vote on it at our next meeting, or how do we want to handle that? Because the map does need to be updated.
Since you brought the map up, Pat, I mean, if you're okay with checking the update, correcting the map, I'm okay in voting on it tonight with the fact
Well,
that.
I don't need to check it. What Shane could do is update the map and send it out to everybody, right?
Yeah, I can provide it as a planner
Okay.
report for an upcoming meeting. I'm happy to do that.
I'm looking for one other thing. Do we have any, are there any members of the public? Do we just have one? Or have more signed on?
Nope, just the one that's still on.
Do we have any public comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Carlton. Shane, thank you for your comments on that. I appreciate that. I've ran the master plan implementation committee that actually implemented the 2002 master plan and updated in 2014. As you mentioned, that it could be updated regularly. I think your comment on focusing on the near-term, short-term goals as you go forward is important. But again, as you move forward in the plan, those medium term and those longer term things become shorter and shorter term if you're not implementing them. So I think that's a good thing. I also remind the planning board that the town council is looking at having a review and how we're doing against the master plan comments as part of their oversight perspectives going forward. So those are my comments. I think my question is, if you change that map, Shane, will that change any of the discussion points in the document?
I would say that table 2.2, which is directly after that, isn't reflective of the current map, because if you can see the table afterwards, it mentions that the high volume of open space that exists in the town of Bridgewater, it says about 10%. But if you look at that map, you can clearly see that that number isn't really representative of that map. Whereas you can see a lot of institutional spaces. There's a lot of blue on that map. So I believe the table is reflective of that, but I can just kind of pan over that table and that map for that information, because that table is tied to that map, and I want to make sure that that's accurate.
Thank you. That's excellent. I've also noted that the state owns $43 billion worth of land in this town. And that map and that table.
Okay,
does
did
not
you say
reflect that.
B as in boy or M million?
It may be million. It's at least 10 digits. It's probably million, but there is a list that covers somewhere between 5 and 10 pages of Massachusetts state property owned in Bridgewater, of which, oh, I know they valued the land at 43 million or something, but that is available, and I think that needs to be mapped in there. I've also mapped a lot of the state loaned land and found the inconsistencies within that map that you're referring to, and also the table. I just want to make sure that any text that's associated with that table is also updated. And because of my experience with the master plan, and I was on the master plan committee, comprehensive master plan committee, in case you hadn't been told that, I think you have to review the changes in that map against the table and against the text. And therefore, I would encourage you not to adopt it tonight.
So we would not be making the changes. We would just be putting together a list of what needs to be changed and providing that to the consultant, who I'm sure would be comparing and making sure that there was no text that needed to be changed.
Yeah, I didn't realize, thank you, Jennifer. I didn't know the consultant was not involved. The last her comment she said is they're out of the picture now. So apparently we're going to have to get some more money to them, but that's up to you guys. But I'm just saying there are changes in the document that may result in the text, and even in some of the options and stuff that were recommendations that may be affected by that table. I've done this for 15 years, so.
I just to back on that comment, I think that table is accurate based on my looking at it. I think the map is just reflective of use code numbers. So that map that was created is based on assessor's use codes, and it does note that on the map. So rather than for that map to be more accurate, I guess that map should be labeled a assessor's use code map. But the way that we're kind of portraying it is through the master plan is what that use of land is, not really from an assessor's code perspective, but an actual land use perspective.
I concur with that kind of change also, but I appreciate you identifying that as a problem, or Pat identifying it as a problem. I've tried to make that point several times, but I didn't have the right language. Thank you.
Sure.
So, Mr. Jemian, to your point, where the planning board owns the document, I don't know if I said this in this meeting or last meeting, but it seems like most towns, the planning board is listed under acknowledgements. Would the board like to have the planning board listed on that page as well? We own the document, we're voting on it. I think we should probably be listed as owning it, so to speak. If not, we can leave it alone.
I'm not sure. Just clarify what you just said, Pat. What do you mean by where are you talking about?
On page 2 of the document, it says acknowledgements. It says Comprehensive Master Plan Committee, and it lists Mr. Bernard, Mr. Callahan, etc. And then it goes on town staff, Mr. Dutton, Mr. DeVobrian, Barrett Planning Group, McMahon Associates. It seems like we just, to keep it professional and everything, we should have the planning board listed. It's our document, so to speak.
I agree. Yep.
That's not a problem at all.
Okay. All right, so are we comfortable with it? Seems like all the text that we had changed, asked to be changed, was changed. Are we comfortable with voting on adopting it? And if there's substantial changes, I guess we could always do an amendment, adopt those pages as an amendment, Shane, correct?
Yeah, I don't see, if the board doesn't have any questions about any other substantial changes. I know this has been kind of a long process, and I think the Barrett Group's done a very good job with this plan. But there's little things in terms of maps that we can definitely fix, and some things that the board has noticed. But yeah, I don't see that this adoption of this document being an issue, or of this master plan. I think it's a quality plan that'll serve the town right.
Any other board discussion or public discussion?
Yeah, will the town own the GIS layers? That, I think Shane, you are an expert. I was told that. Will the town own those layers so we can update them as needed internally?
I wouldn't consider myself a major expert in GIS. I do utilize it well. There are people better at it than I am, but yes, we would have access to GIS layers as part of this.
Okay, last chance for comments for anybody. If there's no comments, it's not a public hearing, so we don't have to close it. Are we comfortable with voting on it with the changes discussed this evening?
I said before, I'm okay with it as long as Shane, based on what you said about the table being okay. That doesn't,
Well, based on the schedule we've been running for planning board, you guys will see me weekly, so you can ask me weekly for the entirety of my tenure.
Well, we can just,
If for some reason you find it's more complex than what we're discussing this evening, we could also always have those pages come back and just vote on those as amended pages.
Absolutely.
yeah, and we won't send it. So normally after it's adopted, it has to go to the state and then to the town council they don't do anything with it, it's just for their information. We won't send it to anybody until those pages are finished and you've looked at them again.
All right. Does anybody want to make a motion to adopt the master plan presented with the amendments discussed this evening?
I'll
Yeah,
make
I'll
that.
make
I'll make
I'll
that.
second.
So a motion by Mr. Jemian, second by Mr. McDonald.
Yep.
Any discussion? Ms. Rojas,
I vote to approve that. No discussion.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Moving on, I think we have minutes to be approved. So we have meeting minutes for February 2nd and March 16th. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion on those or discuss those minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve.
By Mr. Jemian, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
By Mr. McDonald? Any discussion? Ms. Rojas?
No discussion.
Yes or no? Vote?
She can't vote. She wasn't here. Well, she was, I guess.
I vote to approve the meetings.
Mr. Jemian?
Meeting
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Let me yes. Do we have any board committee or planners reports?
No, just let me know if you're available for next week's meeting. I'll have an agenda reviewed and sent around for tomorrow for the 2 zoning ordinances. So if you have any questions or comments, ideally not discussing it right now, but feel free to shoot me an email or comment for that meeting. And then we have a meeting 6/1, the Wednesday after.
And so that meeting on 6/1 is a special permit? Mr. Jemian, you will not be here, correct?
The chances of me not being at the meeting are pretty good right now. It's not definite, but
Is there, if there's anybody else that won't be at the meeting, we should tell the applicant we're gonna have to continue it because we need 4. at least.
Well, we should tell him anyway that as it stands right now, we'll need a unanimous vote so that he can make the decision whether or not he wants to proceed.
Okay, do we have anybody else to think? I know Mr. Geller's not here. But
He said he would be there on the 1st.
Okay,
We do have a street exceptions referral as well that would be placed on that meeting agenda.
That's correct.
Could you just clarify next week's meeting? What is it?
Is 2 public hearings that are joint meetings with the CED Committee of Council, one of which being the Main Street zoning map and the other being a adult housing ordinance.
I think that makes us meeting on the 25th would mean that we have met every week this month.
That is correct.
Do we, I take it we're not going to get paid overtime for this.
I don't.
Maybe I'll bring you a little prize, Ray. How about that?
maybe we'll just do one meeting in July and one meeting in August. How's that sound?
We can, yeah, I think we have a lighter agendas moving forward.
This is stressful.
I'm sorry. I've brought in good luck. No, we'll try to
Well,
have
wait, while
less-
we're still on Zoom, you can put wine in your cup and nobody will know. So if you want to do that.
Is that based on your just general knowledge, Pat, or is it based on-
Experience.
I can do that. I need to stay focused. All right. No, it is, we've had a lot of stuff going on, so it is
You've been busy.
a commitment, so. Are you glad you signed up for this, Oscar?
Say that again, Pat.
Are you glad you signed up for this meeting every week?
Was I ready for every meeting this week? Sorry.
Have you signed up for this meeting every week?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. As long as it's just May. so.
Yes, May.
We have nothing else on the agenda, so if we want to make a motion to adjourn, we can do that.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Adjourn. Second by Mr. Ross. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Pat, we couldn't hear you. Did you call
Can't hear you,
someone?
Pat.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Jemian?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay.
Good night.
All right.
Night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Have a
Have a
good
good
night.
one.
Have a good Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bye.